Hi everybody and welcome along. Now autumn is such a great time for baking, isn't it? We're all getting cozy. We've got loads of apples or loads of fruit and veg of all sorts, and we need to get them turned into a jam or a pie or a chutney or something. Well, I thought this would be the perfect time to do another recipe card. We've got an apple pie one already on the channel, and over on Patreon we've got a lovely carrot cake recipe, but I thought I'd go for something that I personally have never tried, and that is pumpkin pie. So here we have a cute little recipe card. Quite simple. I've just left it as the bare ingredients, and also I'm sure you've got your own secret ingredients that go into your pumpkin pie recipe, and here is a great opportunity to put that all together and create this lovely recipe card to have, maybe slot it into your cookbook or frame it up on the wall in the kitchen. It's just a really nice way of celebrating the abundance of the season. So grab your paints and let's get started. We'll get baking? Nah, we'll get painting. So we're going to start with a banner, and what I did is a curve and then a parallel one, and then I just join them together, and then underneath I'm going to do a little zigzag, and then imagine a line going up and it coming out the top, and there we go. And so remember, this recipe is a very simple version. I really hope that the whole point of this is that you make it your own. So I'm going to begin with a pumpkin. Then we're going to have some eggs. And of course, nothing is going to be very to scale. I need some cinnamon, so we'll do some cinnamon sticks. I'm going to have some double cream. I think you call it heavy cream, but we have it in a pot like this. But notice how I'm putting things like floating about. They're all sort of jiggling about, really. Sugar, and we're going to have white sugar and brown sugar, and again we have little bags that sort of fold over. White sugar will have a brown sugar down here. I've got to have some pastry, and I thought what I'd do is I'd do a rolling pin. And don't forget, you can pause the video once this is done and use it as a line drawing traceable. Okay, so we need to keep things nice and evenly spaced. So I need to sort of put some more things in here. So I'm going to have my salt. I'll do a little spoonful of salt. And then we could also have some lemon zest. So I'll put a whole lemon in. And I could always put the kind of grater thing. And then I thought what might be nice, you sometimes have like nutmeg and cloves and all those kind of things. I feel like that's got a really nice balance to it though. And then I thought what would be cool is at the top is having an actual slice of it. So there's my pie crust, and then I'll come up and join it there, and then imagine there, and I'm going to put a sort of dollop of cream on it, as I often see. I'm just going to join it up like that. I think that's really cool, and I want to try and keep this nice and simple, because as fun as these projects are, you can spend ages doing this. So I've got pumpkin, cinnamon, 2 eggs, double cream, sugar, white sugar, brown sugar, pastry, salt and lemon zest. And of course, if you have your own special recipe, then you've got to put your own ingredients in. But this is just a nice little inspiration to help you create your very own seasonal recipe card for pumpkin pie. I have got here a plethora of warm colours. I've got permanent orange, pyrrole orange, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and then moon glow. Then in here I've got some blues. I've got cerulean blue, French ultramarine, Payne's grey. I do list it all in the episode notes as well. And then up here I've got some lemon yellow, Hansa yellow medium, buff titanium. There's lots going on here. So what I want to do is I want to paint quite sort of simply and loosely. And then possibly it might be nice to do some maybe some line and wash afterwards, maybe to do some pen and ink, because I'm painting this with my size 4 brush, so fully intending to leave this unpainted space like this. It's a nice easy way to paint a pumpkin, just by leaving those little bits of space. Nice one. And then whilst we're here, we may as well paint in our pumpkin pie. Give it a little bit of a yellow ochre, bit of gold. And then I'm going to go down to my size 0 brush. So as you can see, there's a kind of lightness of touch with everything, because I'm painting everything with just little bits of unpainted space in between. And that gives a nice sense of a pie crust. And then what I like the idea of is painting the top of this with pyrrole orange, which I think will get a little bit of a blend and a bleed down. On the whole, it'll probably remain. I think that looks quite cool. Let's do some cinnamon sticks, nice burnt sienna. And then I want to get some moon glow here. Oh, it's quite thick, that moon glow. And give them the little swirl, a little bit of interest at the top. For the eggs, I'm just going to really dilute my yellow ochre and give them a little bit of a lightness by just using water to spread around the rest of that. I will take a tiny weeny bit of burnt sienna and give it a little bit of a roundness like that. I mixed a little bit of Payne's grey into this brown mix I had just here with a bit of water, and I'm just using it to create some very, very faint shadow that I'm putting down as a sort of underpainting. I've decided to do it first, and then I'm going to let it dry and then paint in details over the top. But it's also very useful for metal. So there's my grater. And I've just painted that in a wash in exactly the same way. The pastry was the same colour as the eggs, which was useful. And I'll just use a little bit of buff titanium on the cream there. Lovely. So little things we can do whilst we're waiting. A little bit of lemon yellow and lemon, and a Hansa yellow medium on the lemon. So outlining it, clean off the brush, and then just dimpling it in. Gives you a great basis for a lemon, and then I will just take a little bit of my orangey tones just to give it just a tiny bit of roundness. And then for the pumpkin, whilst we're waiting for things to dry, a little bit of green gold. For the stem, a little bit of burnt sienna. And then burnt sienna for the rolling pin. I was thinking, how am I going to make the rolling pin different to the pastry when it's kind of the same colour, but it can be different. And also we'll do a bit of a wood grain on there. For a long time now, I don't own a rolling pin. I've been using like an old wine bottle. But what's good is the wine bottle, because it's glass, stays nice and cold, which is really good for rolling out pastry, it turns out. Anyways, our grey colours are now nice and dry, which means we can start to paint on some designs. So I thought, in contrast to all the oranges and yellows, we thought we'd do blue for our packaging. Now, cream, I think what I'm going to do is just a few stripes. But what I'm going to do is, if you notice where I've painted in the shadow, where the unpainted space is with the light, if I just clean off my brush and do the blue like that, and then even I could put in a stronger bit of French ultramarine. It's rather clever in making you think it's three-dimensional. And then I think I'll do a little jug. Maybe with some kind of like branding logo on it. I hope that looks like a jug. And then what I'll do is I'll do a stripe in behind it. I don't know if I'll ever be employed for many branding jobs, but that'll do the trick for me. And then on the lid, that'll do nicely. And then for the sugar, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to label all the things. I did a recipe card before, and I really enjoyed doing stripes, so I think we'll stick with stripes, and we can do the same thing where we can add depth to them with a little extra bit of French ultramarine blue if the mood takes us. But you see how the stripes sort of reflect the shape of the bag. There we go. And then of course what we need is for the stripes to come over the top, but we'll let that dry so we don't have anything bleeding into each other. So we've got everything basically painted, but now it's time for a bit more detail. Do you see how I've done these little divots on the grater and just a little bit extra on the spoon? Well, that's just by taking the same colour and glazing it over a dried layer. So for example, I can do the same layer, and it's, even though burnt sienna is a strong colour, I'm painting it on in a very sort of dilute fashion. It's just the same colour. It just gives it a bit more depth, a bit more interest. Sometimes it's about for putting a different colour on, but actually this lemon, there we go, just by putting a bit more yellow on. Admittedly, there might be a little bit of brown in my brush, but that's looking great. I put a little bit extra orange glaze on the pumpkin pie. We could put a little bit. That looks cool. Okay, so we've got this nice banner, which I thought I'd just do in buff titanium. Time for a large brush, I think. And we'll write pumpkin pie on it, but we also need to do our wording of all the little things on the recipe card too. Which you could do with a paintbrush, and I have done in the past. And you could also do it with a little fine line pen as well. It's really up to you, and there's no real pro or con. I think it's just preference. So I'm taking a bit of shadowy colour, just doing a bit of wet on wet in there. When that has dried, I can paint in that bit as well. I might just put a little bit of cream there. So this is the moment where, if you want, you could sort of add a few extra little details. This is my favourite bit really, but I've decided that I wanted to paint it in quite a loose style, and for some people that also means adding some sort of pen and ink lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rub out the pencil, and I'm going to see, because that's the best thing we can do, just to judge it by that. I've decided I like it as it is, because now I'm going to put the wording on. I just think it's going to have a lot already. So, and again, this is just an example, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put eggs rather than like 2 large eggs or whatever, and I'll write pastry. But I like sort of doing this with a fine line, because it just means you can write it out exactly as you want to. And I would always recommend planning it first. Don't just rush in like me. Especially because even though you know how to spell all these things, sometimes your mind just starts wandering and you just write down something completely wrong. So yeah, so I'm just going to fill all these in. So don't you think this would be a really fun accompaniment to an actual pumpkin pie that you'd baked someone? I'm just hinting there if anyone wants to send one through the airwaves. I've never actually had pumpkin pie, so this is a great opportunity. But this is just a little bit of joy, and I'm really getting into my baking at the moment. And of course, you know, it doesn't matter that I squished it all over that way a bit much, put a little star in there. It's all fine, it just doesn't matter. Enjoy it and maybe make even more of it. Make sure you share your paintings with me on social media. And of course, if you're on Patreon, we have a Discord server where we can actually interact and talk and help sort of progress your paintings along. That's just one of the many perks of being on Patreon. But on social media, I will also try and see and share as many of them as possible. So make sure you like and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to make sure you never miss another video. And I will see you again very soon. Bye!